What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? I had a new mechanic come in the shop out of orientation, so about 2 hours as an employee, they sent home to me to show him some ropes in the shop. What he didn't know is that I'm the owner/president/CEO of the dealership, heavy equipment and truck sales and service. 380 employees. I spent 2 days a week in the shop, because that's what I like to do, and, well, it's my company, so I can. Within the first 5 minutes, he questioned my expertise. Okay. No biggie. He doesn't know who I am or anything about me, so I tell him don't worry yourself, there's only one guy here who has more experience than I do. The next 5 minutes was him telling me I'm an idiot for doing something a specific way, and there's shortcuts I can take. There is, but those shortcuts negate warranty payments. So I tell him it's a requirement to do it this way. He rolls his eyes, then tells me no one will ever know about it, and it'll help your flag hours. I reply, it is 100% about doing the right thing. And that's how we operate here. We do the right thing by the customer, the manufacturer, and the company. Then he says I do right by me, not the idiot CEO, so he buy a new truck every year. So I said, well, my truck is 12 years old, and this is your last day of work. Hi there, I'm the owner. That's my name on the big sign. Nodded to the floor manager and told him to process him out of my company. Total time on job, 5 hours. Be careful out there people. Not all bosses wear suits and hide in offices. I worked in maintenance at a beach resort. One of the housekeepers managed to get her delinquents on a job as a runner. Someone who would collect the dirty laundry after the housekeepers stripped the beds. She was actually worried when he started working because I guess he had a bad track record with other jobs. About 3 days after he started working, his mother confronted him about his new expensive-looking athletic shoes and a gold chain around his neck. He just shot back something about having a job now which didn't make sense because he hadn't even been paid yet. Anyway, about the same time there were a couple of reports at the front desk by guests who were missing large sums of money. A police report was made and people were questioned. So after only about 4 days this kid was fired and went to jail for stealing from guest rooms. New guy, hired as quality control inspector after a lot of vetting. Job site was aluminum extrusions factory. Lots of hot, sharp, and heavy things that can crush your hands and slice you up, not to mention all the moving parts. Shows up first day on the job reeking of beer. I was just celebrating my new job with my friends before work. Refused the booze blow test at a nearby hospital. Paperwork completed and fired after 90 minutes by the supervisor and HR. Edit, spelling. New person joins company. On her first morning she wrote an email to her manager how grateful she was to be with the company, how she looked forward to working for us, and on and on. She also wrote an email to her friend about how she'd got a cushy gig and would scam them for as much training as possible for the first couple of months and then leave. Apart from the general lack of wisdom of saying this on the company email system, when writing such contradictory emails it is vitally important to put the right addressee on the right email. Walked out the door after 5 hours. We had a guy start in London on a Monday as large contingent left for a conference in Seattle later that week. I met him at Heathrow with his badge and laptop on his first morning and boarded the flight with him. Longish story, but he ended up slapping a member of the flight crew because she wouldn't let him sit in business class. I called HR when we landed and fired him in baggage claim. We paid for him to fly back to the UK next day. I worked at a bill collection firm in the early 90s, don't judge me. A guy started working there, went through the 2 days of training, then started working. After about an hour, he got up and left. Didn't say I quit. Didn't say this job isn't for me. Didn't say fuck you. He just got up to go to the bathroom, went through the front door and drove away. It took the managers a few hours to figure out that this guy got the job with a fake name, and erased his own debt on the computer. Our CEO rarely sent all company messages unless there was great news or some major event/holiday/emergency etc. One day he sends an email reminding everyone something about an extra day off everyone earned hitting a major deadline and how and when to use it. New woman in accounting, looked like a nice 50-something Dallas church lady, hits the reply all and writes I suppose we all should bow down to Mr. Generosity for the measly day off. Meanwhile she never worked on the project or was affected by long hours. When she realized what she did, the other finance people in her area heard a gasp come from her desk and without saying a word to anyone, she picked up her purse, took a box, added her personal items, and walked out the door to her car never to be seen again. I used to train new hires at a warehouse. We have a floor for robots to zoom around on. full of merchandise and cold spite. Only certified technicians may set foot on that floor. The rest of us, instant termination if we do it. We stress this frequently throughout orientation. I'm training a group of new hires at a workstation. It's their first night, not even lunch yet. One of our managers comes over to introduce himself. One guy, who has already been copying an attitude, asks him about stepping on the floor. Manager reiterates what we all told everyone: do it, and you're fired. Guy, you mean don't do this? Puts one foot on the floor, and away he goes. I heard the rest of the new trainees laughing over how stupid he was. He was even whining about it the whole time his termination was being processed. I'm just glad I didn't get stuck training that snotty, dim-witted little pain in the ass for 2 days. When I worked at Babies R Us many years ago, a fine young lad wrote on the Breakroom whiteboard, "Fuck bitches, hire dimes." For some reason it escaped him that there are cameras pretty much everywhere. Done after maybe 3 days on the job. It was a family-owned business and she said something insensitive about the owner's recently deceased daughter. It was his second week. The guy came to work drunk AF. Picked the emergency axe and trashed the place with it. He got instantly fired and processed in court shortly after. 3.5 hours. She started the same day as me. Partway through the morning I told a couple of jokes to break the ice. She said she had a couple of good ones and started off with "what do you call a NR2?" She went for lunch and never returned. A number of years back I worked at an inbound call center that also had an upsell side to it. A new guy fresh out of training was bragging about how he did over 10x the monthly goal in his first week alone. Didn't see him the following week and heard he was laid off because he was upgrading everyone's plans who called into the highest costing plan without their consent or informing them. About a week or two later I got a text from him asking if I could be his reference for a new call center job he got. He somehow got a hold of a bunch of our numbers and just spammed everyone asking for a reference. Call center worker, new beginner came in hungover as shit on the first day of the job. Within 2 hours of their shift, they struggled to look at a computer for more than 10 minutes, couldn't form a coherent sentence, walked away from the desk without a word only to just full-on faceplant in the floor of the office. I'm sure the actual termination took longer, but it was obvious they lost their job the moment they walked in like a zombie. Guy at a fish factory lasted half a shift before he was fired for refusing to adhere to any health and safety rules. Later got told it wasn't uncommon for people like that. They had to be seen to be applying for jobs to keep their benefits, would lose them if they quit, but could get them back immediately if fired. Worked in a warehouse, minimum staff, temp workers during peak times. Asked my boss for a temp or two for the next day as I wasn't keeping up and we had a truck coming in. I get one temp. I put him to work cleaning and sorting a corner of the warehouse while I got as many orders pulled as I could before the truck came in. 15 to 20 minutes later I go looking for him, and he's not where I asked him to be. I find him in the other end of the complex, pushing a broom. I drag him back to the corner I'd brought him in to sort. 10 minutes later, around 9 a.m., the truck arrives as scheduled and we need to get it unloaded. I go looking for him, not in his corner, find him sweeping again. I tell him the truck showed up. I bring him to the loading dock and I climb up inside to get the top row out. I pass a handful of boxes to him. "Is this what we do?" "Yes. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. This is too hard. I'm going home." I hop out of the truck and walk him to the boss's office. Never saw him again. Total time, barely more than an hour. The place I worked at had a required 2 weeks of training they were very upfront about. You were given a schedule ahead of time and had to agree you could make it before being hired. Day 1 saw one person fired for leaving part way through the day. Day 4 saw another person leaving because she didn't like it. Day 8 was a testing day to see what areas, if any, the class needed to spend more time on before moving to the in-person stuff with the trainer on the floor. A question was worded poorly and it caused a lot of confusion. The trainer said he would not count the question as many of us got it wrong due to its ambiguity. One of the girls in the training class told him, "Good. You should remove it or else no one would have found your body tomorrow." HR manager was literally standing in the doorway while that was being said and freaked out because threatening to murder a coworker over a test question is the opposite of professional. Needless to say, that girl was told she wasn't the right fit for the company. Not a coworker, but me, saw a posting for a hostess at a local Chinese food buffet in town and got an interview the same week and started the week after. First day I go in and it's a Saturday. The head hostess was showing me all the ropes, while telling me how much of a hard ass the owner was and to say yes or no answers only if she addressed me. Behind the counter where we would grab our menus and silverware was too many fridges side by side laying flat so it was no taller than my knees on the bottom shelf and they held all the alcoholic beverages. But it also held all of the employee drinks. Customers are coming and going and I have this system where it just reach down and grab a beer and the owner flutters around and puts her drink in the mini fridge directly under me. I didn't think anything of it until it was time for the next customer to want a beer, so I go to grab a beer and full-blown smack the owner's drink into the fridge and all over the floor. So when I said I'm so sorry, the owner came round the counter and told me to go home. I told her I'd clean it up but she told me no. I honestly felt like crying. Total was around 4 hours. I didn't even make it past the lunch rush. Very embarrassing and never got paid for that either. I worked in construction for 8 years. Guys would quit all the time, but the fastest was this kid named Austin. Austin was rail thin and wouldn't stop looking at his phone. Our boss told him to run a wheelbarrow full of dirt to a pile and he sighed before trudging over to it. The kid moved that wheelbarrow maybe 15 feet, set it down and started looking at his phone again. Boss asked him what he was doing and he said it was too hard and he was calling his girlfriend to pick him up. Austin lasted a grand total of 5 minutes. Showed up early to work on her first day to eat. We worked at Firehouse Subs, and she came in with Subway and started eating in the lobby while in uniform. The boss asked her nicely to eat in the back so customers wouldn't see. She started screaming and throwing a fit, so boss told her to leave and not come back. I'd kiff you can really even say she got fired. She never clocked in once. Fucked the boss's daughters. Yes, daughters. The night he was hired. The real twist is that one of those daughters is now his wife and his former boss his mother-in-law. So I guess he got the last laugh. And a lot of awkward family dinners. Too late to the party, but my friend finally got the sales job he had always wanted. They told him by phone around 4 p.m. He went out that night and got absolutely shit-faced drunk. Probably some coke too. He showed up at his new office in the morning and the boss said, "Excuse me one moment." He came back around 10 minutes later, apologized, said they had hired the wrong guy, and fired him on the spot. At orientation, when going over benefits, guy had been trouble the whole time talking about pay and benefits. Apparently didn't have a bank account or anything, so even paying him was a pain. He refused to get given a check for his pay, so they basically had to give him a Visa gift card every week. But health insurance was the final straw. When it came to health insurance, there were 3 options. Besides relatively standard stuff, 1 had an FSA, flexible spending account, and 2 with an HSA. I forget what the H stands for, but it's another spending account. Money in the FSA disappeared at the end of the year, but the HSA would carry over to the next year. You couldn't pull money out unless it was for medical expenses. Most importantly for this discussion, you do not have to put any money in them if you so not want to. It was an opportunity for you to put money aside specifically for medical reasons. This was completely unacceptable to this guy. Paraphrased a bit cause it was a while ago. But basically it went like this. "Why can't I take it out? It's money. HR, if you're worried you won't spend it, don't have any taken out for it. It can have a balance of 0. That is not a problem. Why are you making me put money in an account won't use? Why can't I take it out if I don't use it? You can't just make it disappear. HR, you don't have to put money in there. And if you want it to carry over, just select one of the 2 plans without an FSA. I don't even want health insurance. HR, you have to. It's the law. This is bullshit. You're stealing from me. Why can't I just have my money? HR, you know what? This is how it works. I've explained it multiple times. Everyone else gets it. If you don't like it, the door's over there." Storms out. HR, calls security, make sure he actually leaves, and that he doesn't get let in if he comes back. First day at a CPA firm. Guy gets a talking to from management because he followed a group of female co-workers to a restaurant at lunch, sat at a nearby table, and stared creepily at them for the entire meal. He got fired a couple of days later for logging into and using a co-worker's computer without permission. Never heard what he was doing on that computer, but I think it's pretty safe to say it was something that he didn't want to use his own computer for. 15 minutes. Working at the wharfs where we had to unload shipping containers with forklifts. New bloke starts work who claims to be a wizard operating forklifts. First container and he drives in too fast while another worker is opening the container door. I'm not the foreman, but I have a go at him about him and tell him to pull his head in. He walks off the job muttering under his breath, "Nobody talks to me like that."